Creating the list page. In this video, we're going to create the service providers list page as you see here. It's going to be a table of some data. We'll also create the data from a JSON file, and then we'll get the data to the controller, and we pass the data from the controller to the view, and we'll display this data in the view using the handlebars template engine. So let's go and create this feature. All right, so here in the Visual Studio Code, we're going to create a view in here in the backend and the views folder here. I'm going to create a folder here called providers, and we'll put that inside that folder. So we don't want to mingle with these standard views here. So go ahead and create a folder. We'll call it providers. So inside the providers, we're going to create another view, view name, we'll just call it provider list. Okay, so I'm going to create a file here, call it provider list.hbs. Okay, so we'll put that code in here. Now the template will be kind of similar to one of these, like these here, the same example we use for the site. But I want to see what it looks like first, because so I'm going to go to the public folder here and the bootstrap and run this index file. So I can't run from here. I'm thinking about just grabbing one of these and plot it and add it to the view there. So let's go ahead and open that in the Explorer and then run in the browser. Just double click it, run the browser. So this is the sample template we're using. And if you scroll down, or if you click on these links here, as you can see, it goes to different sections here. It has pretty nice scrolling. If you want to modify it so it will work this way, that's fine. But I changed it so that it's on a different page up here instead. So I think either this one here, or maybe not portfolio, or the contact page. I want to have like the list here, and then have a table beneath that to display all the information. So we'll look at the service here. So add your service. Okay, so I'm gonna close this. So back in here, and active service, I think this is the service here. Right, so from here to, yeah, we can move these, we can delete these, but all of these here. So I'm going to copy all this, copy it, and then paste it right in here. And we can close this one now. All right, and I don't need all these stuff in here. I'm going to replace it with a table and use the Bootstrap. So that means from like here, yeah, all these stuff from line 6 to line 35, I don't need these. Well, let's see. Maybe if I do, maybe well, I see. I'm thinking like for the table there, it's gonna be responsive. Oh yeah, we're just gonna create it again from delete everything from line 6 to line 36, 35. And then we're gonna create a table here. It's gonna be responsive, I guess. I'll use a div and we'll call class equals the, I think Bootstrap has a class called table responsive. Okay, we'll just wrap it here just in case we want to use it for mobile devices. And then here is our table. Okay, before we do that though, I'm going to change these information here. So instead of services, I'll just probably say provider list. And then the ID would be just provider list. Okay, the name, I'll leave the as is. It's kind of pretty cool. Now for the table though, we're going to have a table, and then we want the table to have the class of, it's going to be a table. I want to have the table hover, and we'll also want to have borders, so table bordered. Okay, so that's going to have a nice hover and border around it. So the T head, we want to just use a light class for that one. And then we have the TR for each of those heading. So we'll leave that for now. And then inside here we have the T body. And then of course in here we have the TR for each row as well. Okay. Okay, so we'll leave that for now as just like that for now. And let's see what else I need to do here. Well, let's see. Right above here. Yeah, we'll come back to this template later. Okay, I'm gonna save that for now. I'll leave it. You can leave it open here if you want. And we need to go and modify our. So I'm gonna close the view for now. The app here. So the app. Notice we have the index router, users router, and then it's gonna have another one called maybe like provider router. Okay, and we'll have another file inside that. Let me close this public here. The routes, I have one that says provider. So as you can see here, I'm just going to copy this. Yeah, I'm going to copy this index one. Looks very similar. And then just copy and paste, and then right click on name, rename it to provider. Providers. All right, so in here then, this main control would not be called main control, it would be called provider controller. And it's going to be called provider. I don't have it yet, but I will create them. Providers. And then these, I don't have it yet. I'm just going to use one for now. It'll be not the home page, but get the listing page, list page. So this will be just slash blank. And this is again just the provider controller dot, we'll call it, I guess, a list. We'll see if it's, we can change it, but for now, we'll just call it list for now. Okay, and then I need to go into the app and then include that in here. Okay, so again, you can just copy or just go here, just say var provider router equals, again, we use the plurals just to make it kind of consistent, require routes slash providers. Okay, it comes from there. Now it's going to go to the routers, providers routers page when we access the URL of providers. Okay, so providers will take us to the providers router. Okay, notice that slash providers, and then that will take us to the providers route, and then this is going to call the provider controller under the list to list the data. Okay, so let's go into the controller, and now we need to create another controller here for the providers. So I'm going to create a new file here, providers.js. Okay, so here I basically do a module.exports and then .list. It's going to be a function request response, and then here we're going to call the render. We're going to render the view called providers in the providers folder slash provider list. I think that's what we call, right? Provider list right here. We're going to call that route, that, and then we'll pass in some data. So here's some data we need to pass to that view. For now, it's empty, but it should load a view when we call the application. So again, trace back again from the app page. We created the providers router. That is coming from the providers and the routers here, providers. And when we access the link of slash providers, it's going to go to the providers router. The providers router, we'll call the providers router file here. And inside here we have a slash, just a slash, nothing there, right? To get the router. And that's going to load the controller. Controller is going to load the list. In the controller, we have the list here. The list function will then be used to render the provider's list to the browser. Of course, I have no data yet, but let's see if that works. Now, to make that work, though, if you want to go check the layout, we see that in the layout at the navigation area, there is a service provider that has a link to the slash providers. That's the one we want, right? So let's save that and we can close this now. And go to the terminal and go to the back end and run it. Okay, so let's load our browser. Okay, so here it is. This is our providers page. Now we're going to fill this table here with some data, and then we should be good to go. Now let's go back to the code. I'm going to actually close this. Okay, so somewhere here we need to pass the data to the table. And the data, we need to import that, or we can need to create that model here, or we can create it in the models folder. So that's what models is for, right? So why don't we go in here and create a models file. Let's create a file called, I guess I call it providers.js. Okay, this is going to be a file of some data. The data will be similar to like a JSON data file. So I'm going to call here just var providers, and it's going to be a list of JSON data file. Okay, something like that. And at the end, I'm just basically module exported, and export equals providers. Okay, so you export the whole thing to wherever it is. And that means when we export that data, we're going to go back to the controller, and up here we can do a constant providers equals require, and we load that from the modules folder and the providers. Okay, so that comes to the providers, and we're going to pass this providers to the template, and I'll pass it as an object. I'll call it it'll be the same name, providers :providers. I know this will be confusing, but this provider is the actual variable we use in the template. This provider here is this up here. So if you want to call it something different, that's fine. I just call my providers providers. You can call it like companies or whatever it is. So let's save that for now. And so let's go back to our model and fill this file here. Now, I do have a JSON file that has some of these data already. So you can go back to the desktop and load this source file again. Open that. Inside the data folder, there should be one that says providers.json file. Okay, so if you open that in Notepad or wherever it is, you see it has this JSON data for us to use. There should be about like 18 or 20 of them. Okay, so we have an array or list of about some objects. So the first one has an ID field, first name, last name, position, a company. The company is an object of some information about the company's information here as well. Okay, so these are all the fields we want to create and add for the table. So on the list, we basically want to show just the IDs, the first name, last name, position, and the name of the company. And when we click on the, I guess, detail page, we're going to display this information on the details page. Okay, so you can just copy all of these, Control A copy, Control C to copy everything, and go back to the code and paste it right in here. So it's already JSON format, so I can copy this, replace that equals to all of that. Okay, yeah, there should not be any error. I fixed it, so it should work very nicely. And you can see here it's that the whole data comes in here, and we'll just save that. And then I can close that now. And the controllers, we pass the providers data to the template providers provided list. And then now in the app HBS file, this is we're going to provide some data. Okay, so now let's go ahead and process this template and pass the data to this table here. So I'm going to go and complete this table first. So this is going to be scope 2 as a column, and this is be the ID field. I'm going to copy this a few times. I think I have the ID, first name, last name, position, and company name. Just those 4. And then one more for me, like the edit and delete and more information. So this is the ID. This will be the first name. This is the last name, position, company, and then I guess we'll just call these like actions. Okay, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. And then down here, we'll do something similar. So the TR will have a TD, and then the TD will have, so the first column will be, I guess, scope 2 as a row, and the first is the ID. So the ID field comes directly from the ID object. So for example, when I pass the data from the controller, when I pass this to the template, I have access to the object providers. Okay, so the provider goes in here, and then so usually if you, not this one, if you were to do it manually, I mean each one you would do like something like this. You put inside the curly double curly braces here, and it'll be like providers dot ID, like that, right? We'll actually providers 0 dot ID because it's an array of objects. Again, if you look at the data, not this one. Where's the data? Go to the models. You have the array of the first object dot ID. Array first object dot first name dot so on. That's a lot of work. Okay, so what the template does is we can actually iterate through the whole object, and it will pull each object out, and we'll just pass the data here so that we don't have to do this. Instead of providing providers of 0.id, we just basically do an ID field for that. And so that means each row represents one provider. Okay, so that means like right around here, I want to loop so that this will be repeated throughout the entire table for X number of people or companies. So that means up here, I'll do a if, I do a loop. A loop in a handlebar is just basically use the pound sign plus the word each, and then each providers. Okay, it works for an array or a list of items. So each provider, get the ID, get the name, first name, last name, and so on. And then once you do that, this is one. And then I write down here, make sure you want to end that as well. So you just basically put the slash each, and that should end that process. So from here to here, it's going to be repeated n times depending on how many we have in here. Okay, so I'm going to go and copy this. The ID, first name, last name, position, company, and then the actions. Okay, these actions here. Okay, so now I just go back and fill in these information. So the first one is ID. We got that already. This is the first name. Whatever you call it in here, it has to match exactly as that. Okay, I call it first name, last name, position. So I want to make sure I call it first name and not first. First name, and then here's last name and position. Okay, now the company, I can't just say company. It doesn't work. Okay, because the company, if you look at this, It's a company is a key, right, of values of objects. So it'll be company dot company name to get the company name, company dot address to get this information here. So that means in my template, I have to say company dot company underscore name, and that will get the name of the company. And then the last row here is not going to be any one of these. It's just basically some actions. Actions like I want to go to the details page. So I'll put here like a link that will go to something like providers, maybe like info or details. Okay, it will go to that page. And then for each company, right? So I'm going to pass in the details page of that, and I pass in the ID along with it. So I will pull that ID. Based on that ID, I'll pull that and only display that information to the page. And then I also want to add the class. It's going to be a button. I'll use the button. Maybe use the BAT info, and I'll use a small button only. Button small. And then I'll put here like more info, ... something like that. Okay, so that will have the link to more information that will display the company information. Let me copy again and do another one here. And then this will be like for the edit. I can edit that company or that provider. I can also delete that as well, right? So when I edit, instead of saying provider details, it says detail provider edit. And again, I pass the ID to that so I know which one to edit. And then the content will be just edit. And maybe not information, maybe I just call it, I guess secondary, kind of the gray button. And then this is the delete. So I'll put here. So usually you don't have to do anything here, just say delete, and it's just called action and remove that. But I'm going to pass it to a section called delete. And again, I pass ID to make sure I'm deleting the correct company only. So again, I'll put not information. Maybe I'll put like the danger here. Okay. The red button. We'll put here delete. Okay. I think that might be it. I don't know. We'll run a check and see if this works. So let's save this and go to the browser and refresh and see what happens. Okay, so there you go. So yeah, this works very nicely. Now these are the data that we just pulled in from the data field, and it passed to this template here, the ID here, the name, and so on. And if I click on more information, as you can see, it goes to the provider's details page, and it passed in the ID here. So I can use the ID search in the data and display that information here. Okay. Same thing with the edit. When I edit, it's going to load the edit page, and then it will edit that user or the information based on this ID as well. And then when I delete, it's going to delete only this particular user or this ID here, this product. If I click here, it should display 192.544, 192.544, and that would be deleted. So this is our service providers page. And as you can see, I did all that in handlebars, and it displays some information here as well. So pretty neat. So in the next video, we'll create the service providers details page.